Let's talk deployment. So let's think about what's happening here versus what was happening in some of the JavaScript apps we wrote in week 1. In week 1, we created files index.html, and then we just opened those in the browser, right? We just double-clicked on them, or we used a view in browser plugin for code, or we used open from the command line. But what we ended up with was up here, file : / something, right? We were just loading the file from our file system. We were not actually serving it with a web server. It was not loading over HTTP, even though we were viewing it in a browser. And that was fine then, because it didn't matter. As soon as we started using React, we started actually firing up a server with npm start or yarn start, because it had to be served over HTTP because of the way that React works when we're loading a whole bunch of stuff over AJAX and over WebSockets and stuff like that to load things asynchronously. Asynchronously, like AJAX, aka XHR, because these are single page apps. Even though things do change, I click a button and the screen changes, but and even signing out and everything, watch the location bar. As I sign out, sign in, sign in opens a pop-up. But the URL of this page never changes, even when the whole page refreshes. I mean, even when everything on the screen is redrawn, the whole page does not refresh. Why am I not able to sign in with GitHub right now? Does the OAuth not even work because everyone's slamming the API so much? That would be bad. Yeah. In any case, the URL never changes. So the others were truly one-page apps. There was index.html, and there was just nothing else to it. But there are a lot more files than that here. We have a lot of JS files. But those are only pulled in, and the HTML from those are only pulled in as we need them. And sometimes you'll have a React app where the URL does change a lot, but you still don't see the whole page refresh. For example, and now Gmail is written in Angular, not React, I think, but same idea. It's a single page app. When you click on a specific email message, the whole screen doesn't redraw, right? It just opens that message kind of in place. But if you watch the URL, it does change. That way, if you were to copy and paste that URL into another window, you would go to the same email. So we can do stuff like that in React too, using routing, which Seth is going to talk more about. But for a number of reasons, we can't just load these files from the file system. So another reason it's a little more work is because we're using JSX, not real JavaScript. Browsers don't understand JSX. So when we run yarn start or npm start, it's doing this build process in the background where it converts all of that to JavaScript that a browser can understand. So we can't just upload our source via FTP to some web server and have everything work. It's not that simple. It's not much more complicated than that, but it is not quite that simple. If you look at your package JSON, you'll see scripts at the bottom. We have start, we have build, test, and eject. We've used start. Now let's use build. You can see build is actually running React scripts build. But to us, we just type yarn build or npm run build. With npm, you have to say run. And it says creating an optimized production build. And we'll see momentarily what that means. All right, we'll look closer at the output here in a second. Let's look at our project structure. This build folder wasn't there before. And it contains everything that you would copy over FTP to some web server. And in our case, it would be just that simple. You just copy all this stuff over. We've got our, most of these files are just the fav icons for different platforms. There's index.html in there, and that's kind of the only significant thing. And then in this static folder, there's 2 folders, CSS and JS, each with 2 files. If you look at the output of the build command, it shows us file sizes after gzip. 136, 137K, and 826 bytes. So it's very, very little. And that's a single JavaScript file and a single CSS file. So as many CSS and JavaScript files as we have, what actually gets built and what gets sent to a browser are just 2 files total. 1 JavaScript, 1 CSS. Because it takes all of that, compiles it down to ES5 that a browser can understand, or it may be configured to compile to ES6, but I'm pretty sure it's configured to compile to ES5. And it minimizes it so that it takes up as little space as possible. So it gets rid of all optional white space by adding semicolons everywhere, shortens all the variable names and function names and every name that can be shortened. And then you end up with a really small file. So we have 136K and 826K. Let's see what we have on the file system. If I open my folder up, get info. This is 167 megs. So it's basically 1,000 times the size of what got outputted by our build script. We do not want to send 137 megs to everyone who visits our site. So this is good. So if you did have an FTP server to copy this over to, you could just do that and it would work. But let's look more at that output. This project was built assuming it is hosted at the server root. In other words, something like davestruce.com, period. As opposed to davestruce.com/mywickedapp. So it's going to make all the internal links root relative. It's going to start them all with a slash. If it's hosted somewhere else on the server, then you have to specify that. Specify the home page in your package.json. For example, add this to build it for GitHub pages. That's what we're going to do. So we'll talk more about GitHub pages.